Hey, look at this. We're not going to be talking about Capitol Hill riots first. I know, we're going to be finally switching over to another topic that I'm quite passionate about, and you guys should be too, because it's affecting everybody, and it's coming up quickly on a year's anniversary. Yay, well, I guess we'll all throw a party, but socially distance, of course, and wear your mask and turn off your brain. Anyways, we got a fully peer-reviewed article, easy for me to say, ready to go for publication. It's just waiting for proofreading, editorial, business, whatever, fucking proper typesetting, printed out on the right paper, you know how it goes. And it's assessing mandatory stay-at-home and business closures' effects on the spread of COVID-19. Now, this might shock you, especially line 7. But it's taking a look at a few different countries, 10 different countries: England, France, Germany, Iran, Italy, Netherlands, Spain, South Korea, Sweden, and the United States, and how they've handled the pandemic. Obviously, there's a couple of names that are probably going to pop out at you guys: South Korea and Sweden, probably more so than the other 8. Now, South Korea and Sweden were very first and foremost of how they handled the first wave of the pandemic, if we're saying that first cycle, as they really didn't. And they say here in the methods, Sweden and South Korea, 2 countries that did not implement stay-at-home and business closures, and they were wildly successful. Okay, everybody was touting the success of South Korea and the success of Sweden until most recently, when they started to backtrack on that, and really the science didn't prove out on that, and they just kind of caved to all of the cool kids in their ears saying, "Oh, you should lock down. Won't you please think of the children?" Well, the people who are calling for the lockdowns right now aren't really thinking about the best practices for the children, so they're more or less just worried about how they can flex their authoritarianism. With that said, let's take a look briefly at this study here, and you will not be shocked by the conclusion. Most restrictive non-pharmaceutical interventions, NPIs, for the rest of the article, for controlling the spread of COVID-19 are mandatory stay-at-home and business closures. Yes, they've been around the longest, okay? There's also other mandatory or non-pharmaceutical interventions such as masks, okay? But mask mandates are something new in larger cities. They've been around since summer, and then probably for your smaller cities or other municipalities or counties, what have you. I know firsthand here, it was middle or end of October, something like that. But they've been around for 6 months, most places. Okay, fair enough. 3 to 4 for the smaller places. And what they're doing is taking a look at the effects on epidemic case growth from more restrictive NPIs, Mr. NPIs to you, above and beyond those of less restrictive NPIs, LR NPIs. Now, like I said here in the methods, they took a look at England, France, Germany, Iran, Italy, Sweden, Spain, South Korea, Sweden, and the US. Using first difference models with fixed effects, we isolated the effects of the Mr. NPIs, sure, I'm started to say it, why not, by subtracting the combined effects of less restrictive NPIs and epidemic details of all NPIs. We used case growth in Sweden and South Korea, as the 2 countries did not implement mandatory stay-at-home and business closures as comparison country for the other 8 countries. Now, in their results, they tested the different effects of the more restrictive procedures based on what France did and South Korea and Sweden were effective with. We'll take a look at the results, and then I know I'm not terribly certain of what happened with France, so I pulled up a timeline, and we're going to go through what they were experiencing when they first went into lockdown and the overall effects. After subtracting the epidemic and LRNPI effects, we find no clear, significant, beneficial effect of MRNPIs on case growth in any country. Let me read that back, because that is powerful, and it will be gaslit into oblivion, because Joe Biden, remember, wants to shut down everything for another 100 days. Anyways, they find in a peer-reviewed study that is ready to go for publication, no clear, significant, beneficial effects of MRNPIs on case growth in any country. In France, for example, the effects of the more restrictive non-pharmaceutical interventions was plus 7% when compared with Sweden, who, you remember, had no fucking regulations. They were like, yeah, just go out and potty. And plus 13%, so nearly double as bad when they were compared with South Korea, who just went to their factories trying to put smartphone technology into every kitchen appliance possibly imaginable. How wonderful. I can now take text messages on my stove, or my curling iron can remind me that my nail appointment is closed. Not me, just for a friend. What I do on the weekends is my business. Now, I'm very familiar with what England, the United States did. Germany couldn't care less. Iran, I don't think that it's transmissible to goats. Italy was hit hard, and so was Spain. And Italy was one of the most draconian first lockdowns. I remember the videos coming out of there where they were, oh, look at how wonderful this is. We're standing in the courtyard of an apartment and everybody's singing out their windows, not realizing how fucking horrifying that is. Everybody's stuck in fucking buildings and they're just singing as a means not to lose their goddamn minds. And for a multitude of reasons. Italy had a very high death count to begin with because a multi-generational families subsist within one family residence. Like, it's not uncommon for grandparents, parents, and children to live within and under one house. So, but what did France do? Well, it's not too terribly dissimilar, but because that study at least went through the effort of comparing and contrasting France and Sweden and France and South Korea, we should at least know what France did. And based on my analytics, I think I might have had one passing glance from somebody from France. So let's do a little learning together, shall we? So on March 12th, Macron locked down the country to begin with. On the 13th, pubs, restaurants, cinemas, anything fun was locked down. First, on the 12th, universities and schools were locked down, okay? And then starting on the 17th at noon, because the virus would know not to attack anybody first thing in the morning, whatever, Macron locked down the country. Okay, and then everything came back around starting on the 14th of June, where cafes, restaurants, and pubs were reopened, and then on the 22nd with schools and entertainment. Travel was opened up on Canada Day. And then on the 10th of July, the state of health emergency in France came to an end. Oh, cool, essentially ending the lockdown. But then 15 days later, the Minister of Health, Olivier Véran, announced that from all of these months are running together when you're talking about the COOF. The 24th of July, face coverings would become compulsory in public indoor spaces and outdoor public areas such as the Eiffel Tower. We all knew that UV light was powerful against stopping the transmission of the virus, which is so deadly because 0.02% of the population, the vast majority of the population, is susceptible to this, but whatever. That's weird that the state of emergency for all of France would come to an end, and then 2 weeks later, mandatory masks would come in. But hey, it came to an end. It's all over. Wearing your masks, that all worked. Until the 28th, when Macron announced that a second nationwide lockdown was coming into effect as of the 30th of October and would last until at least December 1st. It was longer than December 1st because there is no indication that this is going to lift anytime soon because, oh, my new strains of virus, which the vaccine takes care of anyways. But yeah, it looks pretty similar to everybody else that's on the list there. I don't think that there's any other outliers there, but it's important to know what they were comparing and contrasting with, because with the exception of Sweden walking everything back in the past couple of weeks, saying, oh, we didn't handle it so well. Well, it's a virus where the only kind of ends of this is going to be herd immunity, where 60, 70, or if you're Fauci, and probably this week, if anybody asks them, it's what, 80 or 90% of people need to have antibodies or be vaccinated. So who knows where his fucking head is at this point. But general consensus by the people who would actually be publishing papers and not sitting behind a desk would say 70% at the high end would need antibodies or be vaccinated. So eventually, in order to beat the disease, people are going to have to get sick, or they're going to have to get a needle in their arm. So let's wrap this one up. While small benefits cannot be excluded, we do not find significant benefits on case growth of more restrictive NPIs. And just to refresh everybody's memory, that is non-pharmaceutical interventions. Similar reductions in case growth may be achievable with less restrictive interventions. Yup, and this study will be black-holed into fucking eternity because governments may or may not have the means in order to make the vaccine mandatory, or to prove that you have the antibodies in your system, that you survived the COOF, like virtually everybody, as long as you didn't work in a long-term healthcare facility. But okay, let's just play the devil's advocate, because this would be fun, but it's highly unlikely that maybe the governments around the world just have the stroke of genius that, hey, guess what? We're not going to have mandatory masks any longer. It's kind of foolish. There's similar studies out there saying it doesn't really do a whole hell of a lot anyways, and you know what? We finally took a look at the science and stopped believing the scientists who are merely fear merchants at this point. And yeah, not everybody needs to be vaccinated. Just go home, adhere to whatever you want to. take care of yourself. It doesn't really much matter. Well, there's this little thing called the private sector, and they have been much less compassionate when it comes to being a little bit more libertarian than their governmental counterparts, as we've seen lately with their subversion of free speech. Don't think that it ends there, because now we're getting this coming out. We all knew it was coming, but some things you just aren't ready for. Microsoft, Mayo Clinic, Oracle, and many other people will get to at the end of this as well, among a coalition of to develop digital COVID-19 vaccination passport. How convenient a overt way for the government to track you will be mandated by the public sector to be on your phone so you can show your papers at every entry. Fuck off. Let's read a little bit of this before I get too much vomit in my mouth. Managing the coronavirus is finally about to get better. Oh boy! In New York on Thursday, a newly formed coalition of health and technology leaders announced an initiative. Oh boy, the private sector, all of those big businesses that don't have my best interest in mind are going to tell me how I'm going to live my life and what goes into my body? Please tell me more. To streamline COVID-19 tracking in an effort to allow the return to the safety and comfort of pre-pandemic living through the development of immunization credentialing. Yes, because I value safety and comfort among risk and adventure at such a high level. I live in my own personal bubble. I just sit on the couch all day and consume. I stare at my phone. I have a pallet full of cheese puffs, and I never want to leave my home. And if I do, boy, I want to make sure that everybody is as immunized as I am. I don't want to make any unnecessary risks in my life. Could you imagine being that type of person? If you think I'm being a little bit too hyperbolic, I'm kind of dialing it back because I don't want to push myself to a mental breakdown. You can just look for that kind of stuff over on Twitter because it's just become a fucking mental breaking point for the overwhelming majority of society. That might be a bit of a stretch, but the distilled horseshit and the most unstable, insane subsection of humanity is over there. Tripping over myself, just trying to put on that plasticine smile. Now I know why Joe Biden stutters in every speech he gives. The credentials are being referred to as a vaccination passport, conjuring up images of a literal plastic and paper booklets. Oh, that would be far too inconvenient, but will primarily be QR-style digital certificates for smartphones. So now the government can go ahead and put on this network that's there for merely COVID-19 until something else a little bit more dangerous maybe comes along and you're going to need an immunization for that. Or, you know what, we might as well just go ahead and put all of your different tetanus shots. Like, when was the last time? Oh, well, you wouldn't be doing that because you're so concerned with safety and comfort. You would never deal with any kind of hammer and nails. Boy, there's those strong, toxic men who would be building stuff, and you wouldn't be one of those uncivilized brutes who would actually do that. But, if you got in close contact with them, maybe you got a tetanus shot, and we should upload that to your smartphone app. Or when was the last time you had your hepatitis shot? Hell, the infrastructure's already there, and you wouldn't want to put anybody else at risks now, would you, bigot? And it won't stop with just immunizations. They'll start putting on tip-offs to, maybe criminal records, because you wouldn't want to have violent people on your train or your public transportation now, would you? No, of course not. You'd want to know if somebody was a kid toucher. You wouldn't want them close to your kids now. Of course not, but that is something everybody can agree with, and yeah, of course you'd want to have that information out there. And I wouldn't want to sit next to an axe murderer. Of course not. You think that that's too niche of an example, but how many people have actually died from explicitly COVID-19? Yeah, exactly. But eventually that'll just go down to, you're not allowed to ride on the train because you have outstanding speeding tickets and parking tickets. Social credit score is coming, and it's coming via that device right there. But then you also might think that, hey, I don't need to take any sort of public transportation. I don't need to fly that much. I just live in my own little bubble. Well, friends, just take a look up here at your friends in Canada, because we have this goofy thing called the carbon tax at a federal level. And what it's doing is pushing gas prices to a astronomically high level. And they're going to be, probably close to $2 per liter by the end of 2030, because Justin Trudeau wants to tax everybody into government dependence, even more so than they already have, and all of your autonomy will be controlled by the government via passports such as that. Might be a little bit of a doomer outlook, but it's coming. But I think this might also be the kind of tipping point for most people, for most rational people, when they start saying, oh yeah, you're going to have an app and in order to get in anywhere, because it starts with just, planes. Oh, okay, you're in close proximity to people. Public transportation, same deal. Going into a store. How long will it be before you have to scan it before you get into the grocery store and make the turnstiles go forward? I think I'm being paranoid now. It's coming. The global goal, there it is, of the Vaccination Credential Initiative, VCI, is to enable those vaccinated for COVID-19 to digitally access their immunization records, not specifically COVID-19, in an easily accessible, secure, verifiable, and privacy-preserving, that's hilarious, and using it as a way to provide proof to governments, travel officials, and others who soon may take this proof a requirement. The VCI coalition includes partners such as Microsoft, who you should trust explicitly, the Mayo Clinic, and Oracle, because I trust them with antivirus software, so I should trust them with antivirus software. See, they're already laying the groundwork for it. Global initiative that legal citizens will need to provide to governments in order for you to move about the country that you have to pay for through taxes, regardless. But let me tell you who else is on board with this. The Board Coalition of Health and Technology Industry added that coalition partners not previously mentioned include Cerner, Change Health Care, and the Commons Project Foundation, Epic, Evernorth, Safe Health, and Salesforce, that great one-time conservative outlet, conservative like the Koch brothers, that bought Time magazine, and that's become even more unwatchable as they've just tried to leach back into the mainstream lexicon. Because who did they just nominate for Person of the Year? Well, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, of course, because they were only relevant for a few months out of the year. Whatever. Fuck them. Fuck this passport. And like I said before, I think that this is going to be the turning point. I'm not sure. I'm sure that there are a few rebel states out there in the United States for sure that'll just tell you to go fuck off when it comes to this passport. I'm looking at Florida and South Dakota. Tennessee, maybe Texas. The AG's on the level, but I'm not too sure about the governor. But this will demolish interstate travel, international travel. Oh yeah, 100%. It's already going to be there. And up here in Canada, there's no hope. I already laid the groundwork of how carbon taxes are going to eventually drive everybody to have to be far more dependent on the government than anybody should be comfortable, unless you just turn off your brain and believe the science. But I don't know, I'm normally off when it comes to my optimistic projections, or rather premonitions. I think that this is going to be the tipping point, but there's no real opposition to this sort of thinking up here in Canada because we lack a strong right-wing opposition. People out there oppose it, but there's no pushback. All you need to do is just look at all of the draconian lockdown procedures that are going on right now, if you want proof positive of that. And France has never seen a bit of conflict that they didn't instinctively want to surrender from. So I don't know. I hope that this is the tipping point. Not optimistic about it. And this just goes to show you that the private sector has way too much control on what everybody does on a day-to-day basis. Where's that my private business crowd now? But oh yeah, just as one other loophole, didn't cover it in the article, but what if you don't have a smartphone? Well, I'm sure that they're going to have a little tattoo artist there and you'd be able to pick whatever number you want on your arm. But that's enough on that depressing subject. We got more stuff to talk about here today, so I thank you all very much for the gift of your time. I've been Don Consuelo. I want you to follow your gut, get after it. Take care, everyone.